Hey guys, this is Navdeep Singh Jilla. Today we are looking at new updates about Canada study visa. So as you can see on the screen, we have these updates. I'll read everything line by line so that you can understand each and everything in detail. These instructions provide guidance for issuing study permits during the COVID-19 restrictions. Due to the closure and the limited operations of some visa application centers, study permit applicants may be able to give their biometrics, undergo medical examination, submit their original travel documents. Until further notice, IRCC officers will not refuse an application for non-compliance. IRCC officers will continue to request additional supporting documents for necessary actions such as biometrics or medical exams as a part of the application process, and will keep the application open until the documents are received or evidence is provided that action has been taken. Please see the more information in the further section. So updates about these 5 different topics are mentioned below, so we're going to look at one by one. The following foreign nationals who are currently outside Canada are exempt from Canada's travel restrictions and can travel to Canada if they are traveling for non-optional or non-discretionary purpose. For example, the foreign nationals who hold a valid Canadian study permit as defined in Section 2 and document to present to the air carrier status document IMM 1442, the actual valid study permit document, and foreign nationals who received a letter of introduction from IRCC dated on or before the March of 18, 2020. Document to present to the air carrier a paper copy or e-version of the letter of introduction before or after on or before the March 18. That means if you are an international student, you were studying in Canada, but because of some reason you came back to India and you were about or supposed to go back to Canada to continue your studies, you have a valid study permit, you are still allowed to travel to Canada as long as you are able to get flights. Additionally, if you had applied for the visa, you got the visa before March 18th, and you are still allowed to travel to Canada as long as you can get the flights. Foreign nationals who had a study permit application approved before 18th have been sent a letter push notification advising them about public health measures in place to limit the spread of coronavirus in Canada, what to expect on arrival, in particular the mandatory 14-day quarantine instructions. If you're exempt and traveling to Canada as an international student, you'll have to quarantine yourself mandatorily for 14 days. The letter also requests that the students should check with their designated learning institution to make sure that their course or study program is still operating, because some workshop programs which cannot be conducted online, and colleges only used to offer in one intake only, not in the subsequent intake. So that's why it's very imperative to check with the college or university whether they are actually delivering this program in the subsequent intake or not. So foreign nationals who had a study permit application approved will be sent a letter. They may not be exempt from travel instructions. They should not make any plans to travel to Canada until the travel restrictions are lifted, as they will not be allowed to travel or enter Canada. So this is about the applicants who got the visa after March the 18th, 2020. Applicants or students who got the visa before March 18th, they can travel as long as they can get the flights. Next update is about requests for additional documents on open applications. Until further notice, officers may continue to request any additional documents or impose regulatory requirements for processing in relation to all temporary resident, permanent resident or citizenship applications in Canada and abroad, including police certificates, biometric enrollments, passports, medical examinations as follows. So when additional documentation is required to make a decision on the application, processing officers should send a request letter and allow 90 days for the applicant to respond. So in case, let's presume you submitted an application in March for the main intake, and you're still waiting for the response or decision on the same. Now the May has already passed, so visa officers cannot refuse your application for main intake. They'll request for the updated offer letter or deferred offer letter for the next subsequent intake so that they can proceed with the application. They'll give you 90 days time for that. If a request for additional documentation was previously sent but the applicant was unable to comply with the deadline, processing officers should bring forward the application and allow an additional 90 days for the applicant to respond. In first instance, the officers will give you 90 days time to arrange the documents, for example, updated LOAs, police certificate, medical, biometric enrollments, etc. If you're not able to provide these documents in first 90 days, they'll give you additional 90 days to respond to the officer with the evidence. They'll not refuse the application. If the time has expired after receiving 90 days request letter and the applicant has not submitted the additional documentation, the processing officer should send an additional request letter and allow 90 days for the applicant to respond. Until further notice, the applicants will not be refused for non-compliance. Now, there are some updates about Student Direct Stream STS. Due to the closures and limited operations of some visa application centers, limited access to IRCC in several Canada offices, study permit applicants may be unable to give their biometrics, undergo a medical examination, submit their original travel documents. Additionally, local services such as courier services may be disrupted or closed, impacting the ability for the clients to obtain educational transcripts or language test results. Examples of missing documents include, but are not limited to, upfront medical results, police certificates, a GIC, proof of full payment, tuition for the applicant for the first year of study, language test results, educational transcripts, valid travel documents such as passport, Quebec acceptance letter CAQ from the ministry if applicable. If an SDS application is missing any of the above documents and is held for the processing by case processing center, officers must input the following for the tracking purposes: organization ID, other description about the missing documents, name the missing documents, coronavirus. Okay, these are for the instructions for the officers, but yes, as an applicant you'll also get some reference to it. Officers may refer an application to the migration office only in the following situations: the applicant is a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, there are documents that require translation, there are adverse admissibility concerns including adverse medical results applies. So the applicants who do not have the required documents for STS upon submitting their application should not be directed to apply through regular study permit channels or apply through STS once services resume and they are able to submit the required documents. Now, because the services have resumed, you can proceed with the STS applications submission. Updates about study permit extensions in Canada. Due to some closures, some international students may be unable to obtain a letter of acceptance or proof of enrollment from their institutions. As a temporary facilitation measure, students applying to extend their status will be allowed to submit an application without a letter of acceptance or proof of enrollment. In lieu of the letter of acceptance, the applicant should submit a letter of explanation indicating that they are unable to submit the requested documents due to their school's closure. Once these documents become available, the applicants should submit the documents using IRCC web forum. If no documents are submitted by the time case processing center is ready to process the application, documents will be requested by the officer as per the above. They'll not refuse the application. Students required to restore their status will also be able to submit an application without a letter of acceptance or proof of enrollment and should submit the documents once they become available using the IRCC web forum. If no documents are submitted by the time the CPC Edmonton is ready to process the application, the documents will be requested by the processing officer again. There are some updates about students who are destined to study in Quebec. So as a temporary measure, the ministry is automatically extending the validity of CAQs until the December 31st, 2020 for all the certificates expiring between April 30th, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. This measure does not apply to CAQs that expired prior to April 30th, 2020. So if your CAQ was expiring, students who apply to extend their study permit with CAQ expiring between April 30th and December 31st should be issued a study permit valid until December 31st, unless the applicant's passport expires prior to this date. For applicants whose program of study will continue after December 31st, 2020, if they receive a new CAQ before the IRCC is ready to process their application, they should also submit their new CAQ using IRCC web forum. Applications submitted without a CAQ and with a CAQ expired prior to April 30th should not be refused. an officer should request a new CAQ as per the instructions above. So you don't have to worry if your application was submitted before and the CAQ was expiring anyway before the April 30th, you'll get additional time to provide the updated CAQ. New study permit applications submitted outside Canada without a CAQ and expired CAQ should not be refused on the basis compliance with the study permit conditions. As a consequence of COVID-19, students who were studying in Canada prior to March 18, 2020 and whose programs of study began in May or June 2020 and whose programs of study are temporarily shifted to an online format will still be considered compliant with the study permit conditions if they remain enrolled at DLI or continue to actively pursue their studies online as per section 220.1 of IRPR. If a DLI closes, if a college closes permanently as a consequence of COVID-19, students in Canada should either enroll in a new program or study or change their status or leave Canada. For the purpose of assessing if a student is enrolled and actively pursuing their studies and any time taken to transition to a new DLI program, the change status or leave Canada should not exceed 150 days from the school date closed. If the student does not intend to enroll in a new program of study and is unable to leave any country, they must apply for visitor record or work permit. Student off-campus work authorization, these are specifically for the students who are inside the Canada already. Due to school closures, many international students may be unable to obtain a letter of completion. Okay, this is again for the applicants who are studying in Canada. Post-graduation work permit eligibility requirements. So given the impact of COVID-19 on international students in the post-secondary sector, the temporary policy changes are being made to post-graduation work permit eligibility requirements for the following groups of students. Study permit holders who have already started their studies in Canada. Study permit holders who had already begun their studies in Canada but left Canada are continuing the course online from the home country. They'll still be eligible for the post-graduation work permit. Study permit holders who are already in Canada start a program May and June, but those courses will initially be online only. So applicants who have been approved for a study permit to begin a program in May or June 2020 will begin their program online from their home country instead of trying to travel to Canada this time. They'll also be eligible for the post-graduation work permit. These are the basic updates about the Canada study visa. And if you have any questions about any of the update and if you're not able to understand, please leave a comment below so that we can get back to you as soon as possible to resolve your queries. Maybe you can also preferably email your queries at the email address mentioned in the description box so that we can respond back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next video.